When it comes to various people within the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, there are some that just strike instant fear into the hearts of its residents. Ryomen Sukuna is one, and Satoru Gojo is another. But among these great titans of the Jujutsu world, there is a name that many would come to fear, but many in the series don't even know, and that is Toji Fushiguro. This is a man who everyone within the Jujutsu world should have feared, and there are several reasons for it. So let's go ahead and break down what made Toji one of the scariest people in Jujutsu Kaisen. But before we begin, I'm going to ask you a question I want you to reply in the comments. What do you think made Toji such an intimidating presence in the series? A character that would reach so far and wide? Let me know in the comments below. When it comes to Toji Fushiguro, you have to think about the fact that he is one of the few characters with not just a limited amount of curse techniques, but no curse techniques. A character who, by and large, shouldn't even matter in the series, because according to its own rule set, people who don't have curse techniques should not be able to do anything. And yet, he is one of the most feared characters, competing on a level of characters who are often considered gods or great champions. And there are a few different reasons for this. One of the most important is his heavenly restriction. Now, this is actually something Toji was looked down on for in the Zenin clan, because they thought that a heavenly restriction was actually useless. They thought that not having any cursed energy at all made him a freak, and made him an outcast, and made him useless to the clan. And while that might be somewhat understandable given their limited knowledge, what they didn't realize was that it essentially turned him into a monster. In exchange for not having any cursed energy, Toji gave a body that was so superhuman, it not only went beyond the parameters of normal human capability, it wrapped around into being a supernatural force of its own. For example, he gained the ability to move faster than the eye could see, and he gained super strength on par with that of comic book characters. Even more importantly, this gave him unique abilities like it allowed him to see cursed spirits, something that should have been impossible without any cursed energy, and yet he could not only see cursed spirits, but it is implied later in the comic, he could see far beyond the realm of cursed spirits, seeing things that even other sorcerers couldn't identify. This is incredibly strong, and while we haven't seen all of the end of Jujutsu Kaisen yet, it might still be possible that through Maki we could find out that Heavenly Restriction gives people other superhuman features. Of course, this is just one of the aspects that made him so strong. It alone would not garner him the title of Sorcerer Killer. So something else that made him so strong was his heavy arsenal of cursed tools. It probably seems a little odd to use weapons as a reference point for a character in Jujutsu Kaisen because anybody can use them, and unlike in a lot of other series, there are no signature weapons per se in Jujutsu Kaisen. But there are a factor of if you have access to cursed weapons, they can severely augment your powers. Although, as an interesting note, we know that the Zenin looked down on using cursed tools, which is kind of funny given that the thing that they all fear, Toji used them almost exclusively. But it wasn't just the fact that he had cursed tools, it was the cursed tools that he had. I mean, he'd gained access to the Inverted Spear of Heaven, a literal on-off switch for cursed techniques, something so powerful that allowed him to stand up to Satoru Gojo. And he also had things like the Soul Blade, a blade that was so sharp that in the right hands it could cut down to the cells of something, as long as they could see its soul, which wraps into the Heavenly Restriction's ability to see things that other people couldn't. This, by and large, would seem to make him a powerhouse within the Jujutsu world, which they did, but would only get him so far. I mean, after all, he had a superhuman body and superhuman weapons, but there are still plenty of dangerous things in Jujutsu Kaisen that can overcome raw strength. And that's where his last aspect came in. Among everything else, Toji Fushiguro was a strategist, a man who could look at problems and pick them apart and figure out the best way for him to get around doing it. Now, inherently, we are exposed to this when it appears he's being lazy during hidden inventory, hiring other curse users to essentially take on the job that he was hired for. But in actuality, this was part of his master strategy to attempt to take out both Satoru Gojo and Suguru Geto, keeping in mind that these were regarded as the two strongest people in the Jujutsu world at the time. I don't just mean in their high school, I mean like they are largely regarded as the two strongest people in the whole of the Jujutsu world at this time. And he managed to come up with a strategy that would put them both back to back during this whole event. And that has to account for more than anything else. While it is not Maki's forte, we have also seen that her having the same relative set of abilities and applying even the most bare ideas of strategy have yielded great results. Toji took this even a step farther. He was able to create complex plans that would elaborate and weaken enemies and give him good opportunity. We will only be able to speculate in the future what his other abilities might have been or what strategies he could use, but it's pretty clear to say that, especially once we finish up this latest season with the events of the Shibuya incident, just how powerful Toji really was and why every sorcerer should have feared him. But you guys go ahead and let me know what you actually thought made him such an intimidating character.